At exactly 8:04 p.m., the text came in like clockwork. Spin class. Don't wait up to hearts. She always added that damn heart. Like a sticker on a rotten fruit. Neil stood in front of the sink, hands wet from dishwater, and just stared at the message glowing on his old phone. Third Friday in a row. No deviation. No doubt. He dried his hands slowly, methodically, like he had all the time in the world. Walked over to his laptop. Same spot. Same creak in the chair. Clicked once. Location sharing. Still on. Jenna never turned it off. Of course not. Why would she? That would require acknowledging he might not be the oblivious, semi-retired husband who spent his nights folding laundry and watching documentaries about old trains. But Neil wasn't watching trains tonight. Her location blinked steady, Midtown Hyatt. Room 514. Not the gym. Not even close. Across town. Past two other gyms she claimed were too crowded. He closed the laptop. Sat back. Exhaled through his nose. No rage. No panic. That part had already dried up weeks ago, like the half-dead succulent on the windowsill she forgot to water. He'd been watching, not from a place of jealousy, but from something colder. Jenna thought she was smart. That's what made it so amusing. The gym bag she always packed was too light. He checked it one night. A towel, an empty water bottle, and the same pair of yoga pants that never seemed to make it to the washer. Perfume? Untouched. Deodorant stick? Full. And her Fitbit showed her heart rate during those workouts was closer to that of someone binge-watching Netflix than doing HIIT. Still, Neil said nothing. He made no accusations, because that would have given her control. She would have cried, flipped it on him, said he was paranoid, or bored, or projecting because of retirement. The classic moves. Instead, he smiled at her more, asked how her spin class went, even pretended to take an interest in her instructor, whose name she kept forgetting. Was it Angela? Andrea? She's new, Jenna said once. You know how gyms are. And Jenna? She bought it. All of it. The casual Neil. The trusting Neil. The Neil she married 30 years ago and slowly began to regard more like furniture than a partner. And maybe that was her biggest mistake. Thinking quiet meant blind. Before we go further, I want to say this. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or made to feel like a background character in your own life, hit that subscribe button. More than 90% of you listen without subscribing, and this channel thrives on stories like these, stories that deserve to be heard. Your support means we can keep doing what her gym instructor never could. Get to the heart of the matter. Back to Neil. He'd started printing things. Not texts. He knew better than that. No, he printed bank statements. One particularly expensive room service bill that included 2 entrees and a $95 bottle of wine. He filed that one under Thursday cardio. He'd created a folder on a flash drive that looked like a software manual, labeled Winsies_Ops_93. Inside, timestamps, pings, travel routes, even security camera stills he paid for through a private contact. Jenna never noticed. She was too busy reapplying lipstick before yoga, and every time she left at 7:53 p.m., he marked the moment. A soft beep from his system. Another log entry. He could have confronted her by the 3rd week, but why waste an opportunity? Neil wasn't a man who liked revenge, but he was a man who believed in math. And every betrayal had a formula. The final clue had come a week prior. Jenna's phone, left open on the coffee table while she showered off from her class. A calendar invite popped up, one she'd clearly meant to delete. Meeting, M. Carson, room 514, 8 p.m. He took a picture, forwarded it to himself, and made a single, quiet call to an old friend in corporate compliance, Wendell. They hadn't spoken in years. Not since Wendell left their firm for a role overseeing ethics audits at a private conglomerate. But Neil's voice, calm and low, made Wendell sit up. You still handle forensic reporting? Neil asked. Sure. Why? Because I have a story to tell, and a spreadsheet to match it. And just like that, Neil set the machine in motion. No shouting, no confrontations, just a soft click as he closed the dishwasher and looked toward the hallway, where Jenna's gym bag sat like a stage prop, ready for Act 2. And Neil? He wasn't the audience anymore. He was the writer. Neil had never been a dramatic man. That was always Jenna's department. She could turn a forgotten anniversary card into a 4-act tragedy. But Neil? He dealt in systems, in routines. He was a man who could still tell you which drawer the tax returns from 2007 were in and how many toner cartridges were left at the office printer without checking. Which is exactly why Jenna should have known better. Over the next 3 months, Neil ran a passive surveillance operation that would have made his old cybersecurity team jealous. No special equipment. No private investigators. Just pattern recognition and patience. It started with the receipts. One Tuesday night, while organizing the monthly credit card statement, Neil spotted a $38 charge from a rooftop bar in Midtown. Timestamp: 8:37 p.m. Jenna had been at hot yoga. He made a mental note. The following week, same bar, different amount, 2 drinks, 1 shared dessert. Another timestamp that clashed with her cardio fairy tale. He created a spreadsheet. Jenna liked to tease him about those. How he made one for everything from holiday packing to garden mulch. This one didn't get a name. Just a blank Excel file he saved under utility review underscore Q3. Column A, date. Column B, claimed activity. Column C, actual location. Column D, financial discrepancy. Column E, notes. In the notes, he allowed himself occasional sarcasm. Cardio must have been intense. 2 cocktails and creme brulee. He never laughed while writing them. But he did feel something. A tightening. Not in the chest, but somewhere deeper. Like a gear locking into place. It escalated the night he heard Jenna on the phone in the laundry room. She thought he was asleep. She always thought he was asleep. She whispered, "I hate sneaking around. But he's just always there." Like a shadow. Neil lay still in bed, hands folded across his stomach. A shadow. That's what he'd become. Something silent. Annoying. In the way. He wasn't hurt by it. Not in the way most people would expect. He just filed it. Mentally. Then physically. He wrote it on a yellow sticky note and placed it under a tab in the folder titled Verbal Flags. And then came the gym bag. Always packed in a rush. Always the same contents. But Neil, methodical as ever, started checking weight. Her old college scale was still in the guest bathroom. One night, after she left, he weighed the full bag. 9 pounds. A pair of leggings, a top, sneakers, and a towel should weigh more. So he packed it himself. Matched items. 11.5 pounds. 2.5 pounds missing. Every week. No soap, no shampoo. Her towel was dry when she got home. The bottle of dry shampoo in her bathroom hadn't been touched. No use socks. Ever. At some point, she'd stopped pretending. Because she never thought she had to. Neil had been programmed, by years of nodding, smiling, and paying bills, to not notice. She had underestimated him. And that's when Neil made the first real move. He found Wendell. They hadn't spoken since the company merger in '09. Back then, Wendell had handled internal audits and compliance. Smart guy. Suspicious by nature. Paranoid, even. But precise. Neil liked precise. He called the number from Wendell's outdated business card. Didn't expect it to work. It did. "Wendell," Neil said plainly. "It's been a while." "Neil? Wow, yeah? What's up, man? You finally retiring?" "Not yet," Neil replied. "But I might be dissolving a marriage." "Thought you'd appreciate the irony." There was a pause. "Tell me more." They met that Thursday at a downtown bar neither of them liked. Neil arrived 10 minutes early and brought a folder wrapped in an old tech conference tote bag. Inside, screenshots of location logs, credit card printouts, and 3 sheets with spreadsheet data. Wendell flipped through each one like a priest reviewing sin. "She's not careful," Wendell muttered, sipping his water. "This guy Marcus, he's tied to her company?" "She refers to him as her work husband," Neil said flatly. "Sometimes in front of me." "Charming, huh?" Wendell chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He held up one printout. This isn't just cheating. These are contractor payments routed through a holding account. If that name, Carson, was it, is tied to that LLC, and she authorized the approvals. "I know what it means," Neil cut in. "You taught me how to read ledger metadata, remember?" Wendell sat back. "Jesus, Neil. This could be serious." "It is serious," Neil replied. "But not for me. Not anymore." Wendell tapped the folder. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet," Neil said calmly. "I'll call you when it's time." Wendell raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" Neil's voice dropped an octave. "I've been married for 30 years, Wendell. I know when the lights are off behind the eyes. What I need now is for her to learn I've had my eyes open the whole time." He left the bar with the same expression he arrived with. Unreadable. But something had shifted. Neil wasn't investigating anymore. He was preparing. Thursday morning, Neil left the house in a navy suit Jenna hadn't seen in years. It still fit. She barely noticed. She was more focused on her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting her sports bra under her oversized hoodie. "Client meeting today?" she asked, casual as pouring coffee. He nodded, straightening his tie. "Downtown. Shouldn't be long." She kissed his cheek, already halfway to the door. "Good luck," she chirped. No questions. No follow-up. No curiosity. Just another checkbox in her routine. He could have said he was going hang gliding with a stripper named Mitch, and she wouldn't have blinked. She was already gone before the front door clicked shut behind him. Neil didn't head to any meeting. He walked 2 blocks, caught the 7:42 train southbound, and exited early to kill time at an underground coffee shop tucked beneath a bookstore. He read a paperback he picked out solely because it had a red cover and no summary. He wasn't absorbing a word. Just passing time until 6 p.m. The meeting wasn't on her calendar, but it was on his. The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place executives brought mistresses they thought no one would notice. Neil picked it for that reason exactly. Fitting, somehow. The bartender didn't ask questions. Didn't smile, either. Neil respected that. At 6:07, Wendell walked in, a dark overcoat wrapped tight like he was expecting rain. He spotted Neil instantly, nodded once, and sat across from him. No hug. No handshake. Just a look that said, "Let's get to it." Neil reached into his bag and pulled out the second folder. Thicker than the first. Labeled, Session Logs. Nothing flashy. Just the same quiet handwriting Neil used for grocery lists. Wendell flipped it open. First page. A table of names and dates. Second, screenshots of calendar entries pulled from Jenna's shared cloud account. Ones she thought were private. Neil had no password. He didn't need one. She saved everything with the same 3 combinations. Their anniversary, her birth year, and the name of their first dog. Predictable. He'd mapped every gym night to a specific hotel. Times aligned. Room service logs were included. One page had an itemized minibar charge that would have bankrupted a freshman dorm. Wendell raised an eyebrow at that. "I'm assuming these all match company cards?" he asked. "Most of them," Neil said. "Except 3. Those were charged to an LLC. Same one that shows up in this." He slid the final sheet across the table, a flagged expense report from Jenna's department. The contractor listed wasn't on the company's approved vendor list. The security badge log showed 3 different swipe entries that didn't line up with standard clearances. "Marcus Carson," Neil said. "That's him. That's her work husband." Wendell read the report slowly, his face going paler with each line. "This company, Carson and Company Solutions, doesn't even have a physical office. It's registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. Classic shell." He flipped to the metadata attachment. "And she's the authorizer?" Neil nodded. "Every payment above 50 grand. Her initials. Same timestamp every week. Fridays at 5:58 p.m. Right before her class," Wendell muttered. He leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "Neil, this isn't a cheating scandal. This is corporate fraud. If this ends up in front of an ethics board, or worse, the SEC." Neil sipped his iced tea. "Then maybe she should have packed shampoo in her gym bag." Wendell chuckled once. It wasn't amused. It was nervous. "You really want to detonate this?" "I didn't light the fuse," Neil replied. "I'm just following the wire." Wendell sat forward again. "Okay, what's the plan?" Neil paused. That was the part he'd spent the most time thinking through. Not whether to act, but how. With enough elegance that it didn't look like vengeance. Just a consequence. "I'm going to give her one more chance," Neil said. "To confess. To dig her own grave." He tapped the folder. "There's a new contract on the books. Marcus's company submitted another bid last week. I pulled the draft. If she approves it this Friday, it'll trigger an internal review, which means I won't even have to file the complaint." Wendell blinked. "You'd just let the system take it from there?" Neil smirked faintly. "That's the beauty of a good trap. The target doesn't know it exists until it's already sprung." He pushed back from the table, slid a 20 under his glass, and stood. "One more thing," Neil added, turning slightly. "If it goes sideways." Wendell nodded. "I was never here." Neil smiled. "No, you were always here. Just like me. Watching." And with that, he walked out into the night, leaving behind nothing but a half-finished drink, a stack of damning documents, and a silent agreement. The kind that never needed to be written to be understood. Neil's moment of clarity didn't come in some dramatic lightning bolt. It came in the form of a white ceramic coffee mug. Jenna left it on the kitchen counter one morning. Her usual rushed chaos. Lipstick stain on the rim. A lipstick she only wore on spin days. But it was what was scribbled on the side of the mug that made Neil stop. "Carson and Company. Your future secured." He turned the mug slowly in his hands. Black lettering. Corporate promo style. One of those forgettable conference giveaways meant to be tossed in the back of a cabinet. Except this one was freshly used. Neil didn't drink coffee from mugs like that. He used the same chipped gray one every day, the one with the faded IT department slogan from his second job. Jenna never brought home vendor mugs. She thought they were tacky. But she brought this one. That was the day the threads started pulling themselves together. He went into their home office, a space she rarely touched anymore. In the bottom drawer, right next to the old printer cartridges, he found it. A promotional folder from a vendor showcase 2 months ago. Logo embossed, Carson & Company. Solutions. Same branding. Inside, a trifold pamphlet with buzzwords like end-to-end data security and bespoke compliance optimization. Neil flipped through it slowly. It was empty marketing fluff. But at the back, in microscopic print, was the listed business address. Wilmington, Delaware. P.O. Box. No phone number. No staff directory. Just a website. CarsonCompliance.io. He typed it into his laptop. The site was a single-page mock-up. No SSL certificate. No contact form. Neil ran a Hoy's lookup. Registered 6 months ago. DNS hosted overseas. Billing email? Carson@corp.net. He didn't need a password to get inside the firewall. He didn't even need access to Jenna's work machine. All he needed was what she kept giving him. Clues. Because she and Marcus weren't subtle. They were reckless. Like the time she left her phone on the nightstand and walked off mid-call. Neil glanced at the screen. Caller ID, Marcus, Friday prep. The call was still active. He picked it up. A voice on the other end. Hey babe, I've got the draft invoice queued. Told Gary we'd push it through before Monday. You good with that? Neil said nothing. Just breathed once, deliberately. There was silence on the other end. Then a click. She never mentioned the call. Neither did he. That invoice did go through. It was one of 2 six-figure vendor payments routed through a small LLC in the last quarter. Neil, using nothing more than public records and a few calls to his former colleagues in procurement, traced both back to Carson & Company. The LLC was a shell. The compliance audits they claimed to run didn't exist. The reports Jenna's department submitted were carbon copies with changed headers. Neil brought it all to Wendell. They met in Wendell's office this time, after hours. Floor 19. The kind of sterile corner suite designed to make guilt feel antiseptic. Neil laid the files out like evidence in a courtroom. Each document marked with a sticky tab. Yellow for public record. Blue for company facing. Red for things Jenna had signed herself. Wendell didn't speak for a while. Then he leaned over, tapped the flagged expense report, and said quietly, "This is the same Carson account we had questions about last year. The approvals were buried under routine operations. But your wife, her name's on every one of these. Neil, do you know what this means if it sticks?" Neil's eyes didn't move from the file. "It will." Wendell blew out a breath. "This isn't a domestic affair anymore. If the board sees this, and they will now, it's fraud. Multiple counts. Falsified reporting. Breach of fiduciary duty. And Marcus? He's toast." Neil nodded once. "Good. Because toast burns. You understand your name might come up. You're the whistleblower, indirectly." "No," Neil said calmly. "I'm the husband. She'll assume I'm just bitter." Wendell raised an eyebrow. "And are you?" Neil finally looked at him. "I'm efficient." Wendell stared at the folder. Then at Neil. "This kind of thing, it won't just hurt her. It'll take down her entire division. Maybe more." Neil didn't blink. Then maybe she shouldn't have built it on lies. The only sound in the office was the quiet hum of a server in the adjacent room. Then Wendell said, "If you push this forward, there's no undoing it." Neil stood up, straightened his tie. "I'm not pushing anything. I'm just letting the numbers speak. That's the thing about systems. They break themselves if you stop maintaining them." He walked to the door, paused, and looked back once. "Oh, and one more thing. If the audit committee asks where it started, tell them to check the mug." And with that, he left Wendell alone with the papers, the evidence, and the sinking realization that Jenna's little spin classes had just become a multi-departmental liability with federal implications. The kind that doesn't get erased with an apology or a gym towel. Friday night arrived dressed as a perfect cliché. Sunset leaking orange across the kitchen tiles. Dinner dishes stacked neatly by the sink. Jenna upstairs, rustling through drawers with all the urgency of a woman who wasn't late for anything except the truth. Neil sat at the table, slowly swirling the last of his tea. He'd been waiting for this moment for weeks, and she didn't even know it was a performance. She came downstairs wearing the same outfit as always, gray hoodie, black leggings, hair pulled back into a high ponytail that she never wore on non-gym days. She had her gym bag over her shoulder, light as ever, and a faint spritz of perfume on her neck that hadn't made an appearance during any actual exercise. "Wish me luck," she said, leaning in to kiss him. He tilted his face just enough to make it land on his cheek. "Enjoy spin class." She paused half a second longer than usual. Something in his tone must have tripped a wire in her brain, but not strong enough to trigger anything real. She gave him a soft smile, her practiced, "You're sweet, but simple" smile, and walked out the door. He waited for the click of the garage. Then he stood, walked to the hallway where she left her keys when she forgot something. This time, nothing. He returned to the table and opened his phone. Location sharing, still on. She either forgot or didn't care. Maybe both. The dot blinked into existence within 60 seconds. Midtown Hyatt. Room 608. A different room number this time. Upgraded maybe. Or maybe Marcus liked to change it up to keep things fresh. Neil didn't react. Just watched the dot settle into place. He took a screenshot. Then opened his email app. 2. Wendell@.com. 2. Ethics@.org. Subject. For Monday. Body. Please find attached a live location screenshot, timestamped. This matches the previous pattern discussed. Cross-reference against Friday authorizations from Carson and Company. Solutions in procurement logs. She is there now. N. He attached the image. Then one more file. A zip folder containing the consolidated logs, his spreadsheet, the flag vendor payments, and the PDF of Jenna's digital authorizations pulled from public SEC disclosures. He hit send. Just like that, the die was cast. He stood for a long moment, watching the sent icon spin and disappear into the void. That was the moment it became real, not emotional, not vindictive. Mechanical. The trigger had been pulled, and there was no walking it back. Everything else from here on out was just reaction time. He cleared the email app, shut down his laptop, and washed his cup. He didn't feel triumphant. Didn't feel sick, either. Mostly, he just felt still, like a hallway after the lights go out. Upstairs, he noticed her vanity drawer had been left slightly open. He pulled it gently. Inside, her lipstick. The red one she only wore when they used to go dancing, back when dancing meant something. Now she wore it on Fridays, for cardio. He closed the drawer and sat on their bed, letting the silence settle over him like an old coat. By 9:23 p.m., he got a reply. Not from Wendell. From the Ethics Committee. A simple acknowledgement. Received. Initial review scheduled. Will advise. He read it 3 times. Then deleted it. Didn't need it anymore. It had served its purpose. At 10:06 p.m., Jenna came home, humming faintly. She had that post-glow fake exhaustion in her voice, the kind she used to mimic after real workouts, back when there was a real gym and a real schedule. She tossed her keys into the bowl, kicked off her shoes, and said cheerfully, "They're going to kill me at work next week. Some audit paperwork got flagged. Marcus says it's nothing, just a hiccup." Neil looked up from the newspaper he wasn't reading. "Really? Sounds serious." She laughed. "You know how they are. One typo, and everyone loses their mind. But hey, at least my gym streak's still perfect." He smiled faintly. "Impressive." She walked past him, the scent of her perfume trailing like a signature. Not sweat, not effort, just illusion. When she went upstairs to shower, Neil remained seated. He didn't need to look at the clock. He already knew what time it was. What she didn't know was that this wasn't just the end of another Friday. This was the last class she'd ever attend. Jenna came home late Sunday evening carrying a gym bag that could have doubled as a prop in a high school play. She tossed it by the laundry machine like a dropped mic and breezed into the kitchen as if she hadn't spent the weekend lying to the man who still folded her socks. The house smelled faintly of roasted chicken. Neil had cooked, just like every other Sunday. "Smells amazing," she said, setting her purse down. "Did you go all out again?" "Should have saved it for Monday." Neil looked up from the dining table, where 2 plates were already set. "Figured we'd eat early tonight." He motioned for her to sit. Jenna slid into her chair, unbothered, hair still perfectly curled from wherever she'd actually been. He noticed her earrings, ones she hadn't worn since their 20th anniversary dinner. Funny how they always found their way back out when Marcus was involved. Dinner was pleasant. That's what made it brutal. She hummed between bites, told a made-up story about how her yoga mat ripped during class and how nobody even noticed. Neil nodded along, chewing slowly, asking questions where appropriate, like an attentive husband, or a particularly convincing actor in a role he no longer cared to audition for. Halfway through dinner, Jenna glanced at her phone and chuckled. "Monday's going to be a nightmare," she said. "Apparently the auditors are circling again. Poor Marcus is having a meltdown. You know how dramatic he gets." Neil set down his fork. "Should be interesting." She smiled, mistaking it for sarcasm. "God, right? You'd think we were hiding gold bars under the conference room." He cleared the plates after dessert. Homemade cobbler. Her favorite. She didn't ask why he made it. She rarely asked why anymore. By 9:12 p.m., she was upstairs unpacking her laundry. Neil heard the washing machine door open, the distinct shuffle of garments being sorted, and then silence. The kind of silence you only hear when someone's pretending they've done something physical but left no trace of effort behind. She didn't bring down a water bottle. No shoes hit the floor. The towel she used didn't smell of chlorine or soap, just fabric softener. Neil remained in the kitchen, drying his hands slowly, listening to the quiet like it was a symphony. She was up there, humming to herself, comfortable, still spinning her web, still convinced her husband was too gentle, too slow, too soft to ever notice. Upstairs, her phone buzzed. She didn't even bother to hide it. Neil didn't need to see the screen. He'd already mirrored her notifications weeks ago, small app, hidden in plain sight, built by a former colleague he once mentored. She never questioned why her battery died faster lately. The message lit up. Marcus, we're good, babe. No one suspects a thing. Monday will be fine. Just smile and ride it out. Neil leaned back in his chair, thumb hovering over his phone. He read the message mirrored on his screen, not with anger, but with the precision of a man who already knew how the book ended and was just savoring the final pages. He opened a new draft. 2. Ethics@.org. CC. Wendelet.com. Subject. Additional context. Monday action. Body. Per our previous conversation, the final weekend confirmation was received. Target is unaware of ongoing investigation. All submitted documents align with the timeline discussed. The attached screenshot verifies collusion post-submission. She believes no suspicion exists. Monday remains greenlit. Attached, a time-stamped mirror image of Marcus's message. He clicked send. No ceremony. No drama. Just a tap and gone. The phone buzzed once more, this time from his calendar app. Reminder, 9 a.m., audit committee briefing. Location, virtual, invite only. He smiled faintly and set the phone face down. Upstairs, the hum of the washing machine spun to a halt. Jenna walked back down wearing a hoodie she'd claimed she left at the gym. Neil noticed the tag still had a crease. He wondered if she ever even tried to make it believable. Thanks for dinner, she said, curling up on the couch with a glass of wine. You're a better husband than I deserve. He looked at her from the kitchen, dish towel still in hand. Yeah, he said softly. That's probably true. She laughed like it was a compliment, then went back to her show, sipping her wine, texting with Marcus under the guise of group chats. Neil dried the final plate and looked at the small hook near the fridge, where a calendar once hung with stickers for date night, spin class, and weekend retreats. It was empty now, and Monday was already here. Neil arrived at the office just before 7 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual, with a thermos of black coffee, a pressed shirt, and the unshakable calm of a man who'd already read tomorrow's headline. The parking garage was still dark. He took the elevator alone. The lights flickered once on the 12th floor, a glitch he'd reported 6 times already, and he chuckled to himself as the doors opened. His desk was immaculate, almost unnervingly so. A framed photo of Jenna and him at Lake Tahoe still sat on the corner. He didn't move it. Not yet. Let the theater run its course. He unlocked his terminal, pulled up his inbox, and refreshed once. The subject line stood out immediately. Urgent, compliance review, executive presence required. Right on time. He poured his coffee, opened the internal dashboard, and began reviewing dummy files. He had no intention of reading them, but the image of him working, focused, unfazed, would be noticed by the right people. Let them see a man in the eye of the storm looking completely unmoved. By 9:02 a.m., the floor buzzed. Someone from HR walked briskly past his office. Then again, heading the other direction. A ripple, followed by whispers. By 9:11, the director of Jenna's division had gone into full damage control mode, barking into her headset, fingers trembling as she juggled Slack, phone, and the building-wide announcement that a federal audit team was now on site. Neil sipped his coffee. Hot. Bitter. Perfect. 3 minutes later, Jenna's boss stormed into his office without knocking. Face pale, suit jacket hanging off one shoulder, and a manila folder clenched like it owed him money. Neil, he gasped. Please tell me you've seen what's going on. They're here. They're here. Neil looked up slowly. Morning. Cut the crap, the man snapped, stepping inside. The ethics complaint? The flag vendor? It wasn't just internal. They traced the LLC. It's a shell. Delaware registration. Fake address. Marcus's name is all over it. Neil blinked, just once. Marcus. Jenna's boss slammed the folder down on Neil's desk. He resigned this morning. Gone. Deleted his badge, logged off the system, everything. And Jenna, God, your wife, she authorized all of it. Her signature's on 4 contracts. 4. Neil picked up the folder, flipped through the pages slowly, like he was reviewing a menu. Looks serious. Who sent it in? The boss demanded, desperation rising. Whoever filed this, they had everything. Emails, timestamps, metadata, even screenshots of his text messages. This isn't some pissed-off coworker. This is surgical. Strategic. Neil didn't flinch. Guess someone was watching. The man leaned over the desk, sweating now. Look, if you know anything. If you have any idea how this happened, we need to move fast. There are already people from legal downstairs. IT's been pulled into emergency review. They want to talk to everyone. Neil stood, reached for his mug, and refilled it from the carafe by the printer. Then turned back with a perfectly neutral expression. Well, he said calmly, I hope everything's above board. Jenna's boss stared at him, stunned, like he had just realized he'd stepped into a trap he didn't see being built around him. Neil. Yes. You knew, the man whispered. Neil took another sip. I read emails. Occasionally. That's when the phone on Neil's desk rang. Landline, not mobile. He picked it up, listened, then nodded once and said, Understood. He set the receiver down. That was legal, he said, addressing the man now pacing in his office like a caged animal. They'd like you to meet them in Conference B. Bring your laptop. You're not coming? No, Neil replied. My schedule's clear. I've got nothing to hide. The man stumbled out of the room, muttering to himself, already pulling up slack, already calling someone in payroll. Neil waited until the footsteps faded down the hall, then walked to the window, staring out over the parking lot below. From that height, everyone looked like ants. Busy, unaware, moving fast but going nowhere. Behind him, his computer chimed. A new message. Wendell. Subject, status. Body. All green. They didn't see it coming. Committee stunned. Internal fallout in motion. You played it clean. Neil smiled. He walked back to his desk, picked up the Lake Tahoe photo, and stared at it for a long moment, then gently turned it face down. It was nearly noon when the knock came. 2 soft raps followed by the creak of a door pushed open without permission. Neil didn't bother looking up. If you're here to ask who leaked it, I suggest you start with whoever ordered the shrimp cocktail for 4 on the company dime last Friday. A pause. Then a voice. Male. Older. Measured. I'm not with her department. Neil finally looked up. Standing in the doorway was Carter Ellman, senior legal partner for corporate affairs. Expensive suit. Glasses that looked like they cost more than Neil's monthly mortgage. The kind of guy who didn't knock because technically he never had to. Carter, Neil said smoothly. You slumming it today? I'm here off record, Ellman said, stepping in and closing the door behind him. No notepad. No assistant. Just a few questions between former colleagues. Neil leaned back in his chair, crossed one leg over the other. That's code for. This just got worse, didn't it? Carter didn't laugh. Just slid into the guest chair, folded his hands, and stared. We pulled the credential logs. Which ones? Your wife's. Neil tilted his head. The spinning yogi. What did she sign? Carter didn't answer right away. He opened a slim folder. Inside were 4 printouts. Screenshots of the internal approval platform, each showing the same digital signature, Jenna L. 5:58 p.m. Different dates, different vendors, but the same timestamp. Every single Friday. It's consistent, Carter said. Too consistent. That's what made us look deeper. Routine, Neil said, sipping his coffee. She always moved fast. Emails, documents, Christmas cards. If it had a sign here line, she clicked before reading. Carter leaned forward. That's the problem. If she signed without reviewing, on multiple contracts, she's in violation of internal policy. If she did review, and knew, that's willful negligence at best. Conspiracy at worst. Neil raised an eyebrow. You think she and Marcus were building this together? Carter nodded. We don't think. We know. There's a pattern. Marcus submits. Jenna signs. Within 72 hours, a wire moves. Same routing chain every time. No oversight. No dual authentication. She was the fail-safe. Neil shrugged. Then your system failed. Not just her. Carter gave a dry smile. Spoken like a man who used to design those systems. I built redundancy, Neil said calmly. They disabled it last year to streamline procurement. I flagged it in Q1. Got told to stay in my lane. Carter exhaled through his nose, like he was trying to suppress the weight of a decade's worth of ignored red flags. We're going to need her login history, he said finally. Her session logs. And we'll subpoena her personal devices if we have to. Neil tapped his desk twice. Already compiled. Flash drive labeled J_activity in the second drawer. Keep it. Carter didn't move, just studied him. You're being awfully cooperative. I'm being efficient, Neil said. Big difference. Carter reached for the drive, paused, then asked the question that had been hovering in the air like a loaded gun. Did she know? Neil didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling, tracing the faint water stain near the fire sprinkler. It looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. She knew she could sign anything without consequence, he said eventually. She knew Marcus would clean up the mess. She knew I wouldn't ask questions. But did she know what she was approving? Neil looked at him flatly. She was always quick to click I agree. That silence again. Carter stood. You know she's going to say Marcus manipulated her. That she trusted him. She did. And she'll say you ambushed her. Set her up. I didn't set her up, Neil said. She was already standing in the hole. I just moved the shovel. Carter took the flash drive and nodded. We'll be in touch. I won't hold my breath. As the door closed behind him, Neil turned to his computer, opened a new file, and began typing. Not a report. Not an email. A list. He labeled it. Casualties, collateral, and otherwise. At the top. 1. Marcus Carson, resigned. 2. Jenna, pending termination/investigation. 3. Division F, flagged for full audit. 4. Procurement oversight, under review. 5. Trust, deceased. He saved the file. No need to print. Not yet. He stared at the screen a moment longer. Then got up, walked to the break room, poured himself another cup of coffee. It was going to be a long week, and he was just getting started. Tuesday morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Neil stood in the kitchen, stirring his oatmeal while the birds chirped outside like it was any other day. But the silence upstairs told a different story. No hairdryer whining at 7 a.m. No clatter of rushed footsteps. No fake gym bag by the door. The usual whirlwind of Jenna's Monday night turned Tuesday morning cover story never arrived. She hadn't come home. He didn't call. Didn't text. He just sat at the table, sipping his coffee, the spot across from him as untouched as her conscience. By 9:40 a.m., his inbox was already erupting. Not with spam. With fallout. The subject lines painted a mural of implosion. Urgent. Department F frozen. New internal review protocols. Immediate action required. Vendor approvals under investigation. Compliance breach confirmed. Do not engage with external press inquiries. He clicked none of them. Not because he wasn't curious, but because he didn't need to. He already knew the ending. He'd written it. At 2:33 p.m., the message arrived. Plain. No greeting. No punctuation. They put me on leave. Indefinitely. It came from Jenna's personal email. The one she used when she didn't want to mix us with them. The one she used to forward Pinterest boards and travel ideas for trips that never happened. Neil didn't respond. He just stared at the screen, the blinking cursor sitting like a smirking accomplice. Then the second message came. This one from her work phone. Did you know anything about this? The dots hovered for a while, then disappeared, then returned. Neil. Still, he didn't type. He picked up his mug, sipped. The heat was fading. Finally, he replied with a single line. About what? He hit send. She didn't reply. Instead, a few minutes later, a notification blinked across the top of his screen, an internal memo forwarded anonymously. Effective immediately, Jenna L., redacted, is suspended pending investigation. Further communication from her account requires review. At the bottom of the memo, someone had added a comment. How the hell did no one catch this earlier? Neil closed the window and leaned back. Later that afternoon, he passed her office. Empty. Her nameplate was still there, clean, professional, pretending. But her desk had already been stripped of anything real. The framed photos were gone. No coffee mug. No lipstick-stained tumbler. Just a hollow space and the faint scent of vanilla body spray that clung like bad memory. A young guy from IT stood awkwardly by the cubicle, box in hand. She left it all, he said to no one in particular. Neil paused. She does that. He walked on. In the elevator, he checked his messages again. Nothing from her. Just a few internal updates, most marked confidential or internal eyes only. His favorite was one forwarded to all department heads. As of this week, procurement approvals will now require two-person verification. No exceptions. Revolution always comes too late to be useful. That evening, Neil sat on the back patio alone, grilled himself a steak, opened a bottle of wine she had been saving for her birthday, poured 2 glasses, left one across the table, untouched. At 8:01 p.m., his phone buzzed. A location ping. Jenna had checked into a hotel. Not Midtown. Downtown this time. Different name. Different man. Didn't matter. Neil silenced the notification. Upstairs, the hallway was darker than usual. Their wedding photos still hung near the stairs, crooked, like it had been bumped months ago and never straightened. He left it that way, let it lean. By 10 p.m., he'd set an alarm, brushed his teeth, and climbed into bed. The other side of the bed was untouched. Pillows fluffed, blanket pulled tight, as if it had always been that way. And in a way it had. Wednesday morning arrived with gray skies and the kind of dull wind that made everything feel slower, heavier, like the air itself had caught on to what was coming. Across town, at a boutique hotel Jenna had checked into under her maiden name, a courier waited in the lobby holding a plain white envelope. No branding, no urgency sticker, just a name written in crisp blue ink, Jenna L. Redacted. He tapped his foot as the concierge made the call. 10 minutes later, she came down, sunglasses on, hoodie pulled tight, like a celebrity in hiding from her own life. No smile, no makeup, her usual flair replaced with something approaching. Finally, humility. Or fear. "Package for me," she muttered. The courier didn't respond, just handed her the envelope, confirmed the signature, and left without a word. She walked slowly to the elevator, hit the button for the 5th floor. Alone, she held the envelope as if it might explode. In the room, she opened it at the desk, not the bed. Inside, a folder. Thin. Deliberate. On top, divorce papers. Every page filled out. Every clause initialed. Final page, notarized and dated. Yesterday. Below that, clipped neatly, was a single printout. Color. Glossy. The familiar blue dot blinking on a map. Midtown Hyatt. Room 514. Timestamp. Friday, 8:06 p.m. And beneath that, in clean block handwriting on a sticky note. "Your 8 p.m. sessions really were productive. Thanks." She stared at it for a long time, then reread the top of the papers. Filed under his attorney's name, with full breakdowns of asset division, ironclad, cold, methodical. She would walk away with less than she thought. A lot less. Because what Jenna hadn't known, what she never bothered to know, was that Neil had maintained a private trust account for over 2 decades. Separate. Inaccessible. The marital assets were meager in comparison. What she'd called his little retirement hobby was actually a silent majority share in a mid-sized consulting firm that had ballooned in value after a key merger, one she had ignored entirely. Her name was on none of it. It wasn't hidden. It was just invisible to people who didn't look. People like Jenna. Her phone buzzed. She hoped for Marcus. It was Neil. Just a message. No greeting. No question. "Signed copies will be picked up Friday. You can leave them at the front desk." She didn't reply. Because what could she say? That she didn't know? That she never meant to? That she was sorry? Those weren't currencies Neil accepted anymore. She looked around the hotel room. Sterile. Forgettable. A fresh purgatory of her own design. Outside the window, traffic crawled along the boulevard like nothing had happened. Because for the world, nothing had. But for Jenna, everything had. Back at the house, Neil stood in the garage, sorting through tools. There was no ceremony in his posture. No celebration. He wasn't gloating. He was just cleaning. Making space. He pulled down a dusty box from the top shelf labeled J. Keepsakes. He opened it, glanced at the contents. Old cards, vacation tickets, a photo from their honeymoon where her smile still looked real, and then closed it. He didn't throw it away, just taped it shut, then set it by the door. At 9:12 a.m., his phone buzzed again. Email notification. Subject line. Divorce, receipt confirmed. No body, no attachment, just confirmation. He poured himself a coffee, walked to the window, looked out at the garden they'd planted together 15 years ago. It had gone a little wild lately. Ivy creeping over the fence. Roses blooming out of sync. He made a mental note. Trim the hedge this weekend. Then smiled faintly. Because in the end, there hadn't been shouting. No courtroom drama. No revenge show or screaming matches in the rain. Just one final, quiet transaction. Backed by timestamps, signatures, and a GPS pin. All Jenna had to do was show up. And Neil? He'd been there the whole time. Watching. Waiting. Documenting. Until finally, the paper trail ended where it began. At 8 p.m. Room 514.